that turned out to be a little better. But Rush Street had a lot of places, from the Plugged Nickel, and there were a couple of others whose name I forget, who were, really major jazz clubs, to holes in the wall. There was a lot of blues there, although the main blues was on the south side. And let me just say one thing I want to, before I forget, about Rush Street. I went to a little hole in the wall because I heard something that sounded like a good trumpet there. And it was a place narrow, long, with a bar in front and a few tables and a bandstand at the end of the room. And there was a rather heavy-set black lady who played trumpet, and a pianist and a drummer, all women, 3 women. The drummer was also very good, but the trumpet player was excellent. Now, her name was Tiny Davis, tiny because she was big, and she had been in the International Sweethearts of Rhythm and everything. She was really good. She was really good, and if I'd had any sense, I would have tried to get her a record thing or whatever. But so that was, a surprise. And then there was, the blues scene, which was a separate thing. And the guy who knew about that was Bob Custer. Bob is, of course, Delmark Records, and the record store that he still has. The one who went out and moved. Then we thought it was gone, but he came back, and he's of a respectable age now. He's about my vintage. So Bob was surprisingly involved in the blues thing, and he knew everything about it. And that was another great introduction for me. He took me to places where at the time you could still see all kinds of great blues performers. And there were people in Chicago. Chicago, from a standpoint of race relations, was pretty good. It's pretty good. But there were still people who said, "You went to there, went to this place, went there." No problem, no problem. One was very warmly received. Bob was well known there, but there was no problem. But I got to see Muddy Waters, and actually Muddy Waters several times. And much later, when I was back in New York, we were going to bring, well, I'll tell you about that later on, with some friends of mine. We put on some concerts in New York, and we were going to bring Muddy Waters, and we would have been the first ones to bring Muddy to New York, and I don't know whether he ever really got here at all. But he was amazing. He was fantastic. And his harmonica player at the time, James Cotton, who then went out on his own. Then there was Little Walter, who was just, there is a statue of Little Walter at the German jazz, the one in Darmstadt. There's before the entrance, there's sort of a space there, lawn in front. And the first thing I was asked when I was there for the first time by, who turned out to become my good friend, Wolfram Knauer, who runs the place, he asked me, "Who is that?" Pointed to the statue. And I said, "It's Little Walter." He said I was one of the very few people who had been able to do that. It was just amazing what he could do with the harmonica, with this thing. And there were so many. Buddy Guy was still in Chicago. Howling Wolf, who was almost scary, in his intensity. But that blues scene was wonderful. And it was really the last of them. There was not much left in the South anymore. They all come to Chicago. And there was nothing like that in New York. Funny thing is, if you go back historically to Harlem, they were not hospitable to the blues in Harlem. Ma Rainey flopped in Harlem. Bessie Smith did a little better, but she had to adapt. When she performed, she did pop tunes of the day, you know, which I would have loved to hear. You know, I would have loved to hear her do that. But the blues was not really not welcome in Harlem, which is strange.